Hey, welcome to KSL Plus, where we break down topics and stories so you have the information you need. I'm Matt Rascone. Now, the Utah legislative session, of course, wrapping up, and we want to look deeper at one of the session's most controversial bills, a bill that would ban transgender girls from competing on sports teams with other girls. Now, it doesn't address transgender boys playing with other boys, and it's a conversation, as you may have noticed, playing out across the country. So the bill passed the House, but ultimately died in the Senate committee after Governor Cox said he wouldn't sign it as is.
I'm not in a place yet where I'm comfortable with the bill as it stands right now.
Deseret News reporter Ashley Imlay has been following this bill and helped us to understand all the sides here.
So it really would just affect secondary education where there are the school teams.
Can you talk about the what the bill sponsor? That's Kara Birkeland, right, and Representative Kara Birkeland, and what is she saying about? I mean, why was this bill introduced, and what is she hoping to accomplish here?
Yeah, she is very passionate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
About the history of women's
I'm
sport.
sure that this bill is something that most people have on their radar.
The crux of her argument is women weren't really given opportunities to compete until the 20th century, mid 20th century, and before that it was just men could compete, and women have fought for their place in sports and their opportunities to compete.
Women's sports matter in Utah. They matter to me, and they matter to every parent of young girls, and they matter to every athlete out there trying their best. It used to be when I was playing sports that we played sports because it was fun. It was good fitness and health. That's what I grew up being told what women's sports was about. These days, women's sports are about competition. They're about scholarships. They're about opportunities to excel and exceed. Currently in our state, there's litigation because we have women's football, women who want to play football, but they were told they weren't welcome on the boys' team. And when they played on the boys' team, they were mistreated and they felt unwanted. They wanted to have a girls' team that could play against the boys. They were told no. They wanted to create their own league where they could play. And they again were told no because it's not safe for them. On the other hand, in Utah, we just recently saw a couple days ago in the headlines that we have girls wrestling, finally, in Utah. These young women are thrilled for the opportunity to compete. And if you read the articles out there, the interesting part is that we talk about how it is safer now. Co-ed sports are harmful to our female athletes. So here's an opportunity to stand behind that, to get behind the triumphs and the successes that we have made as females in the sports arena, and to say, you matter and we want fairness for you, not just in parts of your life, but in every aspect, including sports.
There are some who feel that their places are being taken away by transgender women and girls. And there have been a few instances where there were transgender women who have won races or who have kind of dominated in their sports, and so that's led some cisgender, those born female athletes, to speak out against it. But then there are some who support.
You said there have been actual instances in Utah?
Not so there aren't any transgender females who compete at Utah schools, but we heard from some track runners at Southern Utah University who testified in the first committee hearing for it, who talked about running against a transgender woman from another school out of state.
The first time I raced against a biological male, I remember just feeling bizarre.
One of the girls said that just from the start of the race, she knew that she didn't have a chance, and thought her only chance of winning would be if the transgender woman let her win.
I couldn't believe that this was okay and deemed as fair.
That was a really emotional hearing on both sides.
This bill does discriminate.
So there are quite a few arguments against it.
It tells some children, you can't play. You don't belong on the field. That's discrimination.
So there's the argument that we're only talking about transgender females, and it doesn't affect transgender males.
What a pass! There's double team down there.
That they still would be allowed to play on like a boys football team under the bill. So just the fact that it's targeting the small population, and then there's the argument that that we already are in a mental health crisis, and these kids are already going through a lot, and having the opportunity to play on a team and to belong could really help them.
In 2019, suicide was the leading cause of death for Utahns ages 10 to 17 and 18 to 24. Between 2017 and 2019, 414 teens died by suicide. And many advocates and mental health experts believe many of those teens were members of the LGBTQ community. Again, we want to mention, if you're having any thoughts of suicide, there is support for you, the Safe UT app or the National Suicide Hotline. That's 1-800-273-8255.
So there are no transgender athletes playing in Utah schools already. So there's also the argument that it's an issue that doesn't even exist, that it's a culture war bill to kind of get ahead of the issue when it's not even an issue.
We also spoke with transgender activist Sue Robbins. Here's what she had to say about the bill.
So the bill and all the discussions around it have a lot of problems. And I think talking is important, and the governor pumping the brakes, I think, will be a very good thing. And then we could sit down and bring sides together and talk, because this has become this enormous amount of misinformation, and we should have concern for our girls, whether they are transgender or not. We should protect things for everybody, including our transgender girls. And this discussion has gone heavily down the road of comparing boys to girls, and girls who are on a transgender path are girls. They're not boys. So it is a poor comparison. Transgender girls go on puberty blockers. They go on hormone therapy. And we already have those policies in place, and we don't have an issue. And that includes out in the Olympics, that has had this policy since 2004. And we've had 0 transgender people get out of the trials, never mind being dominant. In the NCAA, they've had the policy for 10 years, 1 medal on Division II out of thousands of competitors. So, and then this bill even covers kindergarten through 12th grade. Prepubescent kids are all the same. And we're sitting here blocking them all in this and impacting our youth based on a broad fear. So I very much welcome this. I very much welcome discussion. I very much welcome calm, cool heads coming together and pulling the science together and looking at the reality of what's already happening, and not creating fears for the future that we have years of data to show it doesn't exist.
I even noticed that some other representatives, were talking about how it goes beyond sports, that this would actually hurt the state. What are they talking about this?
Yeah, so Utah is, has a bid into, or plans on making a bid to host a future Olympics, and those against the bill say that it could really hurt Utah's chances, or completely take it out of the running, because transgender athletes have been allowed to compete in the Olympics. And the sports community is already trying to address the issue and looking into the science. And there's the fear that it will prevent other tournaments from being held in the state. And there are those from Silicon Slopes Commons, which is the kind of sister organization of Silicon Slopes. They've spoken out against it and said that it will really hurt companies in Utah with recruiting, and it will prevent companies from choosing to move to Utah. And Salt Lake Chamber has also, they haven't come out strongly against it, but they've said they feel it should be left in the hands of athletic associations.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's that argument also that lawmakers should not even be the ones who are deciding the fate of these transgender athletes.
Yeah, there's also the concern that the state will face heavy lawsuits from this. Idaho, which passed a similar bill last year, already has faced lawsuits and seen economic effects, according to those who are against the bill. And they're worried that Utah will go down that same path and that it'll hurt the state's reputation in the country.
The bill passed the House 50 to 23, largely along party lines. Shortly after that, Governor Cox weighed in.
We still have a lot of work to do.
What did he have to say about the bill?
Something that really stood out to me, what he said both sides are right, which really I think illustrates how tough of an issue it is, and how both sides are so passionate and they're both fighting for the same thing, which is fairness.
These kids they're just trying to stay alive. There's a reason none of them are playing sports. And so I just think there's a better way.
If you didn't know, lawmakers in more than 20 states have introduced bills this year that would ban transgender girls from competing on girls' sports teams in public high schools. So Mississippi passed a bill almost identical to the one here in Utah. Georgia still debating it. For some, that raises the question of so-called culture war bills or message bills. According to the Associated Press, in almost every case, the bill's sponsors cannot cite a single instance in their own state where this has caused problems. Proponents have said the bill is about being proactive, preventing possible problems in the future. Some point, though, to a pair of runners in Connecticut. Now, between 2017 and 2019, 2 transgender sprinters won a combined 15 championship races, prompting a lawsuit there. Supporters of transgender rights say the Connecticut case gets so much attention from conservatives because it's the only example of its kind. They argue these bills address a threat that doesn't exist.
And then there's a really interesting aspect of the debate that, like, what's the point of sports? Is it for the competition and for scholarships and other opportunities, or is it for friendship and learning teamwork and having a place to belong? And I think sports are both of those things, or all of those things. My takeaway was just that there's so much still that we don't understand about this issue, and that there's so much conversation that needs to take place, and kind of everyone needs to come to the table and hear each other out.
Okay, so the legislative session ends March 5th. Debate on this bill at the Capitol has ended, but we likely haven't heard the end of the discussion on this topic. Thanks a lot for jumping on with us. We'll be back next week with a deeper look at the future of business, healthcare, and education as we are now 1 year into COVID.